Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of The Extra Point. I'm your host, Roland Rainey, CEO of R2 Sports Management. And here we are again, as promised, bringing you the latest in the NFL and the NCAA and entering week 2 of the NFL season. As always, I'm joined by my colleagues today. We have the man in red, Justice, coming out of New York. How we doing today, Justice?
Doing great today, Roman. Happy to be back with you guys.
Hey, great to be back. I'm just really enthralled with all your red on the day. You even got a red hat. It's pretty bright. All right, coming out of Indiana, we got Jeremy Coleman. Even Jeremy, ladies and gentlemen, is sporting a lot of red. What is going on today, Jeremy?
Doing good, Roland. Ready to talk some football. I've got to rep the Indiana Hoosiers on the day Big Ten comes back.
So I guess that's where we are. And ladies and gentlemen, coming out of New Jersey, now he is repping the East-West Shrine Bowl jacket. Robert Parker, how are we doing today, Robert?
How's it going, Roland? And we're going to get into that East-West Shrine Bowl jacket because we got a player that had a horrible week 1 out of the East-West Shrine Bowl. So we want to talk about that guy.
Oh, wow. So, hey, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. Robert wants to go straight for the jugular right out of the gate. So let's hit into it. The news is out. People are buzzing. The sports world buzzing. NCAA buzzing. We got the Big Ten announcing a return. So since we're talking red and since we're talking Hoosiers, Jeremy, what do you think? Is this the right move by the Big Ten?
Well, I definitely think it's the right move if they're considering what the players want to do, what the coaches want to do, what the players' parents want to do. They've all been voicing that they want to return to football. They want to give the kids a chance to play, and that's exactly what they're going to do. Big Ten announced on Tuesday, kind of started leaking over the weekend that a return was coming. It was officially announced on Tuesday. So I know I texted with a coach I still know at IU. You know, they're very excited to get back to it. You know, Ohio State's excited to get back to it. They're all excited to get back to football and to have this opportunity. There's a lot of stipulations that come with this. You know, it's not just, we're rushing back, we're playing. You know, there's going to be rapid daily testing. That was the big thing that the Big Ten wanted moving forward if they were going to attempt a football season. It looks like that's going to be in place. They've mandated that rapid testing has to be in place at all universities by September 31st. And there's going to be rigorous testing protocols to make sure players are staying safe, they're not contracting the virus. I was reading an article before we got started here that there's going to be a 21-day turn time if a player tests positive. So if he tests positive, he's essentially going to be out of football for 3 weeks. So, you know, fingers crossed that everyone can keep that together, because if you could see a lot of players getting that, you might have a pretty shortened roster pretty quick. And teams running for depth are really going to feel that more than others. So,
hey, phenomenal points, especially I will concur with you that I think the Big Ten, by coming back with a variation of protocols, is probably the right step. Now, I'm going to swing over to New Jersey, Robert, to you, because one of the things that I'm very curious about is when you bring back, you know, not necessarily mid-season, but the beginning of the season, you're kind of a couple of weeks in, and you make an announcement that you're going to restart the season. There's a lot of players in the Big Ten that opted out, and they are eyeing the draft right now. They're eyeing their off-season workout plans. What happens now? Do the Big Ten allow those guys to somehow opt back in and actually rejoin the university and rejoin the team? How is this going to work?
Well, I think that's the topic of conversation, if you ask me, Roland. Two of the biggest stars in collegiate football, in Wyatt Davis and Shaun Wade, they both opted out. But the talk surrounding is that, you know, those guys want to opt back in.
But, you have Rondell Moore, who also opted out. And earlier on, when the Big Ten said they wasn't going to play, but he never signed with the agent. So I think that's one thing moving forward that, the NCAA and the Big Ten Conference is going to look at is what players signed with agents and what players haven't signed with agents. And, that might be the way that they go with it. Whoever hasn't signed with the agent is going to be able to opt back in.
Hey, let's swing that same conversation over to Justice, because Robin makes a great point here, Justice, but I have a serious question. If I'm an agent and I just signed a player that I potentially believe might be a second rounder, third rounder, there's a lot of finagling with contracts. So is it going to be that easy, not necessarily on the university side, but on the agent-player relationship side, where a player can just say, hey, I'm going to opt out of this contract so I can continue my college career. What do you think? How is that going to play itself out with the relationship between the player and the agent?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest unfortunate about this whole thing. I'm glad the Big Ten is playing this year. I think it's a great thing for the players, great thing for the scouts. But, if some players did sign with agents and, they're not allowed to opt back in, I think that that could, like you said, it could create a bad working relationship. It could be unfortunate for the player if they don't get the opportunity to come back in. And I think, we could see some sour grapes from the player. It could end in maybe they drop the agent because of that. It's all yet to be determined, but, I hope not a lot of players signed a contract with agents yet. I definitely want to see them play if they want to. But, it's going to be interesting to see, what players did sign with agents and what players do want to opt back in, because it's going to it could create a problem for some players who did sign contracts.
Yeah, Jeremy, I know you spoke to some coaches at Indiana. Any gauge on what is this going to look like?
Well, I know no one in Indiana opted out, so I know they're going to have a full team. But Justice brought up a very interesting point there. The NCAA is going to have to really be the ones to weigh in on the decision here, because even if a player did sign a contract, even if they drop that agent, at this point they're not considered an amateur player anymore, and that's kind of the big word that's been thrown around for years in the NCAA, and that's how they've been able to make so much money off college football, all these college sports, is because they're considered amateur student athletes. If they signed, unfortunately, I think the NCAA is going to say that ship has sailed. Just because once you sign a contract to be a professional athlete, you don't just stop. Even if you were to, void a contract, you win it. You set some things into motion that said, I'm choosing right now to end my collegiate amateur career and become a professional. So even if, Justice said, even if players do drop their agents, I don't think that's just a, once all cure all for their eligibility. I think that's going to be some serious finagling, like Robert said. How that's going to work. And then, as far as the agent goes, I wouldn't have too much qualms about my client going back and playing, because, in all honesty, yeah, there's always a risk he gets injured or gets sick, but there's also a great chance he vaults himself from a third-round pick into a first-round pick. All these guys have the talent to do that. So it'll be very interesting to see going forward, kind of how that situation is handled.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of excitement in the air about the Big Ten, but I think there are not just the COVID protocols that will be put in place, but I think there is a tremendous amount of questions behind those players that opted out that want to come back in. Same thing with the Mountain West. There's rumblings right now that the Mountain West are going to reconvene meetings and start entertaining the notion of kicking off the season. Air Force Academy recently got a waiver to actually host Navy here in Colorado Springs. So the wheels are in motion. However, there are a lot of players that have jumped ship and started to move forward with their professional careers. And, the one thing about a professional career when you depart the college ranks is when you start signing contracts. The game has just changed. This is not a, hey, I'm going to go to my agent and, hey, buddy, can you let me out my contract so I can go back and play college football? I mean, there are some serious implications here between an agent and a player. And hopefully some of the players were smart enough maybe to put some very unique clauses that might be very COVID oriented. Maybe there's some opt-out clauses within those contracts with the agent. But I think this is going to be one hell of a deal to keep our eye on. So with all this excitement about the Big Ten, what exactly are you guys excited to see? Are you excited to just see Ohio back out there? What exactly about the Big Ten that you are really excited to see, Robert?
Just like you said, Roland, I think Ohio State. When you talk about having a national playoff, and you talk about the Clemsons, you talking about the Alabamas, you got to throw Ohio State in there, and it just wouldn't be right if Ohio State or Michigan or Penn State or any team from the Big Ten is not in that picture. So I think that's what I'm most excited about, just having those teams back in fold to just create that competition, Roland.
Yeah, what about you, Justice? What's the big deal? I mean, you got all the red on today, so what's the big deal about the Big Ten?
Well, since I got all this red on, I might as well follow up with Robert. Ohio State, it's a big-time school, probably one of the biggest in college football. And I just saw a report that Sean Wade did opt back in. He will be allowed back in, so that's going to be huge for that school. So I just think it's a great opportunity. I know Justin Fields has been pounding to play. It's going to be exciting to see how he develops. He's going to be a big name going forward. The combine, the draft. He's going to be that top. He's going to be in the top 10 discussion, no doubt. It's going to be interesting to see what he does this year. And like Robert said, it just wouldn't be right to see Ohio State, not be in the college football playoff. I will say it's going to be interesting to see. With some teams starting earlier, some teams starting later, what happens when the committee, has to pick the playoff teams, and let's say Ohio State goes 8-0, and there's no team that's played since the start that went 9-1. They played one more game, but they have a loss. It's going to be interesting to see how they decide who gets that, final playoff spot if it comes down to that.
Hey, that's a phenomenal point, Justice. That's pretty in depth there on, what are going to be the second and third order effects of the actual season and the schedule itself. Jeremy, when oftentimes you hear the Big Ten, the SEC, you're talking about big time schools, big time players, big time plays. That's what they're all about. However, around the country, there are other football conferences that, as I mentioned earlier, the Mountain West, they're looking at wanting to come back in to the mix of this conversation. Now that you have the SEC, the Big Ten, you got some other smaller conferences that had already agreed to continue to play. Is this a time for the NCAA to look across the board and say, hey, let's take the best of all of these COVID protocols, put them in place, and just let's get the whole NCAA season roaring as a collective whole? What do you think?
I think that'll be very tough logistically to kind of set up for the NCAA, since they've kind of let the conferences go about doing it their own way. I think trying to put it all together at this point would be challenging, to say the least. With the Big Ten coming back, joining the ACC, the Big 12, the SEC, like you said, the Mountain West is trying to make a comeback here. I read an article saying the MAC might be trying to come back here. I've heard the Pac-12 actually could be following suit too. The governor in California recently rolled back some of the legislative things there to allow more kind of a practice setting from what I glimpsed in the article. So a lot of football is coming together right now. I think it's too hard and too late at this point to try to develop one universal code of how every school should be testing their athletes. Now, I mean, you would hope that all these schools, spend every penny they can, to make sure, the players are getting the right tests and everything. The biggest thing, that brought the Big Ten back was this rapid day testing with the saliva, because their biggest concern was the myocardosis, the inflammation of the heart that can occur. So I just think there's way too many moving parts here for the NCAA to try to organize something from up top.
No, hey, look, you got a great point, but, I definitely would like to see some type of collective effort if this football movement is going to take place, because there's so many effects, right? You got high schools around the country that definitely have not moved forward. So it's almost this weird trickle-down effect of, hey, the NFL deciding, hey, we're going to move forward. And now a lot of these NCAA conferences decided, hey, we're going to move forward. And I'm quite sure probably around the nation right now, a lot of high schools are thinking, hey, maybe we should move forward with a season. So there's a lot of excitement in the air, still a lot of questions, seem to have some of the right protocols in place, but we'll have to see and wait and see how it all plays itself out. Ladies and gentlemen, you are here with us right now on The Extra Point. I'm Roland Rainey, your host, joined today by Jeremy Coleman out of Indiana, Robert Parker out of New Jersey, and Justice Gordon out of New York. So let's take it there, guys. There was a lot of great play last week. There was a lot of poor play last week. And of course, they didn't have a lot of preseason workout. So, some people can say, a lot of teams were sluggish. They're trying to get back in the groove. But I don't know, Robert. What do you think? What's the good and bad from last week's NFL play?
Well, for me, Roland, the good is definitely that bad man by the name of Aaron Rodgers. If you just watch that game and just look at the throws that he made, he's looking like the Aaron Rodgers of old. He hasn't missed a beat. And I think the drafting of Jordan Love, that kind of really set a fire on and sparked the plug. I know he said after that draft he went and drank like 4 fingers of tequila. So I think he's still on fire because he was on fire that first week rolling against Minnesota Vikings. He pretty much dismantled that defense and that secondary. And Devontae Adams, hands off to Devontae Adams. He just shows and goes out every week in and week out and shows you why he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. But with having Aaron Rodgers to throw him the ball, that is one of the most deadliest duos in the NFL, Roland. So that was the good for me.
Hey, I tell you what, that was a pretty good game. And to your point, Aaron Rodgers was sharp. He was sharp. He came back with that fire, as you mentioned. He came back with a level of accuracy we probably hadn't seen last year a whole lot of. So for his first game right out of the gate, he looked very good. What's the bad? What did you see that was bad last week?
I think the bad has to be the Philadelphia Eagles. You're up 17-0, and then you let Washington come back from 17 down and to win the game. Carson Wentz looked pretty good. He kind of looked like the Carson Wentz of old in the first half, just hitting Zach Ertz. And, I know they were limited because they didn't have Miles Sanders out the backfield. But once again, Roland, that's pretty bad being up 17-0 and losing that game. So the Philadelphia Eagles and Carson Wentz losing that game is definitely the bad.
Very much so. That's a great game to point out because last week there were several games where teams were up and they're going into the fourth quarter. One of the things I saw was conditioning. Conditioning started to become a factor. And I think in this game we saw that. And, hey, Washington took advantage of it and did a great job coming back for the big win because they needed it. Jeremy, over to you. Hey, good and bad of last week.
Well, one team that kind of surprised me, I think surprised a lot of people that played a pretty good football game was the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yes.
I don't think a lot of people gave them, much hope, after trading away so many pieces in the offseason, trading Calais Campbell away, trading Yannick Ngakoue right before the season here. I mean, there's a graphic up during that game. I mean, they traded away like 8 sort of key players. They traded away A.J. Boye to Denver. I mean, they unloaded on that team, but then they were very competitive. That defense was still young, very quick, very fast. They were flying to the ball. And then, honestly, I thought the offense played extremely well, too. Gardner, a lot of people aren't big fans of Gardner Minshew, but, he proved he can move the ball. And then, honestly, the biggest surprise of the week was the East-West Shrine Game MVP, James Robinson, earning the starting nod, which ended up allowing Jacksonville to release Leonard Fournette. He had a great day on the ground. So, I mean, I thought Jacksonville really kind of exceeded expectations for a lot of people. I thought they had a nice win over the Indianapolis Colts. Picked Philip Rivers off twice, and just in general played with a lot of energy. And that's good for that franchise. Another graphic during the game. They've lost the third most games in the last 5 years, of any franchise in the NFL. So,
yeah, I tell you what I was very impressed by with the Jaguars is their ability to integrate the rookies. They did a phenomenal job integrating the rookies into the overall scheme. And that's hard to do. A lot of teams try to pull it off. It's not easy. Playbooks in the NFL are not easy. But a lot of these rookies, I give credit actually to a lot of these head coaches because they did a phenomenal job integrating those rookies. To your point, running back had a phenomenal game, but you also had Shenault. He came out a year early, got integrated, and he got a touchdown in the game. So great job of them integrating those rookies. Justice.
And then C.J. Henderson on defense. I mean, he might have been the most impressive defensive player in all of week 1. I mean, he had both interceptions of Philip Rivers, played the run great. I mean, top 10 draft choice at cornerback there, really living up to the billing already.
Definitely. And I know I wanted to swing over to Justice, but let's stay right where with you, Jeremy. Give me the badge.
I didn't think Tampa Bay looked very sharp coming out of it. I know Mike Evans was dealing with a little bit of an injury. So he wasn't the same playmaker that he probably could have been. Marshawn Lattimore shut him down. He was a non-factor, I think, almost the entire game. Had a few targets, but I think he only had one catch the entire day. Chris Godwin had a nice day. Scotty Miller had a decent day. But in general, the offense looked a little flat at times. I do think they did a nice job kind of rebounding there. That young defense looks very good, but I don't think the offense was quite there. Not to the level the NFL was hoping that game would be. They were hoping that game would be high scoring, high power, offensive shootout. And I thought that it kind of go back to the good. I thought the Saints already looked like a playoff team. They already kind of looked like they were in midseason form. So.
Hey, that's interesting you mentioned that because I will jump on the Saints when it comes around to me. To your very point with Tampa Bay, one of the things I believe a lot of the fans, a lot of the sports world was looking for is that Tom Brady, go out there swinging the ball around and to really showcase that, hey, no matter what the team is, the guy just has the goods. He is the GOAT. He's a Hall of Famer. I think that's what a lot of people were waiting on. But one of the things I picked up on in that game was a lot of miscues. And I think that's what you get when you have a veteran quarterback like Tom Brady trying to bring along a fairly decent wide receiver core. Let's go back to that one critical, I won't call it a critical play, but it's a pivotal play where Evans was on a skinny post. He pulled up because the coverage had switched and the deep safety came over and shadowed. Normally, for a wide receiver, hey, I'm not getting that ball. There's no way the quarterback is going to throw me that ball. But if you're Tom Brady and if you're with the Patriots, Your receivers are running through that in the Bill Belichick scheme of things. They're running through that. They're not pulling off. And Tom Brady is used to slinging the ball into those small windows. So that, once again, I think those are the small miscues that you have with a veteran quarterback and a wide receiver group that just hasn't gelled yet. I do believe come midseason, they'll be in good form and they'll be rocking and rolling. Over to you, Justice. Give me the good and the bad.
Real quick, I just want to come to the defense of Mike Evans real quick.
Oh,
Lord.
Here we go.
I want to come to his aid real quick because that miscue that had happened Sunday, Bruce Arians did say that was on Tom Brady. That Mike Evans ran the right route. He said that was on Tom Brady. They just, it's going to take a while to get that connection going. But I just don't want to throw that on Mike Evans because it was definitely just a miscue between the two.
Well, and that's my point, right? My point to that is,
yep.
In the scheme of the play, in Mike Evans' mind, hey, I'm pulling out. I'm not going through that because there's no way the ball is coming to me. But if you are Tom Brady and you're in the Patriots system, your receivers are running through that. And I think those are the things, growing pains. That's what they are going to experience in the first couple of games. And then, I think within time, they will be able to read off each other. Go ahead, Justice. Go with your good and bad.
Yeah, I'm going to start off with the good. I kind of got to swallow my pride for a second. I kind of put my foot in my mouth earlier this week. But me and Jeremy had a debate about Ben Roethlisberger. We had a little debate talking about the comeback player of the year, and I told him I didn't think Ben would get it, but that showing last Sunday, that's quite a performance.
I hear you.
I think a bright spot was the Pittsburgh Steelers last week. Yeah. That defense is elite. That front seven is elite. Cam Hayward, T.J. Watt, Bud Dupree. You got Minka in the back end. That defense is going to be top 5 probably. And we know what they had on offense: Juju Smith, Deontay Johnson. Those boys are talented. But I think the big question mark was Ben Roethlisberger. I wasn't too sure what to expect from him, but he came to play on Sunday, and if he can keep playing like that, I think the Steelers could be looking at the AFC Championship. They played really well.
I think a lot of folks would agree with you.
That.
The way they played, I think a lot of folks would agree.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Going to the bad, I'm gonna come after a team that's playing tonight. Actually, the Cleveland Browns. I know they went up against Baltimore, the Baltimore Ravens. They got Lamar Jackson, they got the defense, they got all that. But you got Odell Beckham Jr., you got Jarvis Landry. You paid Austin Hooper. You got Nick Chubb. You got Kareem Hunt. Baker Mayfield's supposed to be the superstar QB. 6 points, 38-6. That is just ugly. That is terrible. I don't know how that happens with an offense loaded like that. They got to do better. Baker Mayfield has to step up. I think Odell Beckham had 3 catches for 27 yards. That's just ugly. They got to play better. They got too much talent to get blown out like that. With the Pittsburgh Steelers playing like they are, the Baltimore Ravens being the Baltimore Ravens, they're my pick for the Super Bowl. If they don't fix this quickly, they're going to miss the playoffs, and they could look at a 4-win season. So, this is definitely going to be a make or break year for Baker Mayfield, and he's got to step up tonight.
Hey, I'm with you. And I'm going to swing my thoughts on the teams, on the good and bad, kind of based on that premise. I'm going to give you 2 on both sides. The good, I really was impressed with the Las Vegas Raiders. I was very impressed with Jacobs out of that backfield. Holy smokes. The guy was not afraid to take the cuts. You get him out on the edge. He's Speedy Gonzalez running down sideline. And the one thing I really like is how they put him in positions where he was easily able to slice through the 4 and the 6 hole, and literally just coming off the blocks and just really right up the seams. The guy was phenomenal, did a great job. Some of the play calling I was pretty impressed with Gruden on some of the play calling. Now, got a little questionable towards the end. They let their guard down a little bit defensively because they allowed a couple more points to be added towards the end of the game, even though they had the game in hand. But I'm pretty impressed with the Raiders. Next week, not next week, but this Monday night, they're going to have the Saints there. Should be one hell of a game. Speaking of Saints, Jeremy, to your point, I am 100% in concurrence. The Saints look like they were in mid-season form. Drew Brees was Drew Brees. I know oftentimes, his name doesn't elevate to the top of the list when it talks about Hall of Fame like Tom Brady, but the guy was legit. The way they further integrated Hill into the offensive package, they were on point. So kudos to those guys. Great on them. Great on the Raiders. So it should be one hell of a game come Monday. Now, let's talk about the bad. Because I have about had it with the freaking Dallas Cowboys. This is ridiculous. You change your coach up, great. You change a couple of schemes up, great. But you kept the same offensive coordinator for continuity. But you got the same results. To your point, Justice, like with the Cleveland Browns, you have too many weapons, Cowboys, to not be effective. I honestly cannot remember the last time the Cowboys actually blew out a team. You have one of the best running backs, highest paid running backs in the NFL. You got threats on the edges like it's Christmas time when you have Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb. What more do you want, my friend? Gallup is doing phenomenal work, picked up right where he left off from last year. I don't know what to say. And look, what did we talk about the first half of the offseason? Dak Prescott contract. Worthy of it, not worthy of it. And here we are again. The defense is about the most suspect defense I've ever seen in probably like 10 plus years. Name me a defense that just seems to just drop like flies. From Lee to now we got Vendors. What more? These guys need to go out to the free agency. I'm sorry. And they got to go out and get some quality players. They got to tighten up that defense. I'm ranting and raving right now because I'm about fed up with America's team, which, yes, I am a fan of, have been since 1985. And here we are with talent galore, and you barely can put the ball in the end zone. Unbelievable. And I will finish this conversation up with, Lord, the Detroit Lions. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You not only had a huge cushion to where you could have just ran the ball the rest of the damn game and hopefully that your defense played well to get you to win. You lose the big lead, and then I feel so bad for the rookie. What probably could have been a phenomenal story. Rookie, opening game-winning touchdown, and my man dropped the easiest ball that you can potentially catch in the end zone. And that was actually a weird catch because I was very curious on why when he flexed his hands out, like receivers are taught to do, why did he turn his head upfield when he was already in the end zone? Just catch the ball and don't move. Just stand there and you would have had a touchdown. Why did he try to turn basically up in the end zone? I don't know, guys. I don't know what your take was on that game, but I was beyond disappointed on how the Lions let such a huge cushion just go to way and walk away with an L.
Yeah, you got to feel bad for Detroit fans. I've got a friend who I met through IU football. If the longest time we just talked about the Detroit Lions invent new ways on how to lose football games. And you just kind of like felt this was exactly part of the same, scenario they've had for years, But like you said, they had a nice sized lead, and then let a Mitchell Trubisky-led Chicago team come back.
Yes.
Isn't like they were facing like Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers went off, on some historic, 21-point comeback. This was the Mitchell Trubisky-led Chicago Bears, and I don't mean to keep ragging on Trubisky. I think he's a better player than a lot of people give him credit for. But to your point, Rowan, they could have just ran the ball, killed some clock, and man, just finding new ways to lose for the last decade and a half.
I want to take that and finish this segment up because there is a theme with last week's games. Forget about the Aaron Rodgers and the Drew Breeses of the world who went out and played phenomenal football. And definitely, guys, chime in if you saw some of the same things. I understand we were in a COVID environment. Practice weren't really structured the same. You didn't have a preseason to where you can work out a lot of those kinks. There was a lot of mismanagement of football games. So to the point of the Detroit Lions mismanaging that game by constantly throwing the ball, could have sat on it, ran the ball, chewed up some clock. You had the Dallas Cowboys. What a freaking awful mismanagement towards the end of the game. Where was that field goal at? Why wasn't that decision made? The Denver Broncos. Don't even get me started on how that game was mismanaged. Then they did the carousel thing with the running backs after Lindsey went out. Instead of staying with Gordon, who was getting at least 10, 15 yards at a clip. There was a series of mismanaged games as if that was not the first game of the season, more like the first game of a preseason. What's your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I'll go to that Denver game real quick. I thought it was. I'm not even going to talk about the running back switch. I'm going to talk about Big Fangio not using the timeouts at the end. The Titans were in a position to run out the clock, and the Broncos just let them do it. Like they had, I think, at least 2 timeouts there that they didn't bother using, and it's just like, man, total mismanagement there because the Titans had just gotten into field goal range under, just right at around the 2-minute mark.
They had all 3
taking timeouts to stop that clock ahead of time. As where, on their last drive of the game, they might have had 20 seconds. They might have had a minute. And that's a world of difference. And it drives me crazy when coaches don't manage the clock. It's like the one thing they're like really there to do, and then they just don't do it. That drives me up a tree.
Absolutely correct, man. And not just the head coach, but these coaches are surrounded by a massive staff who has their ear in just a total loss in focus. What do you think, Justice? What was your perception on some of the mismanaged games?
Well, yeah, in terms of the Denver Tennessee game, it was a wild football game from the Tennessee kicker missing 4 field goals, I think it was, to Vic Fangio not calling those timeouts at the end of the game. It was just a wild game. I really hold Vic Fangio accountable for what he didn't do. There was about, I want to say, 1:15 left when they had all 3 timeouts, 1:15 left, and he just did not call timeouts for no reason. I don't know what the reason is. Maybe he was banking on the fact that their kicker hadn't made a kick all night. Maybe that was why he didn't call the timeout. I don't know, but it was a terrible call. I don't understand it. And, just to jump to, if we're talking about, heartbreaking losses, how could you not feel bad for Joe Burrow? He led that game-winning drive all the way down to the 15-yard line. And the kicker misses the field goal from, about 25 yards out. I think he pulled his hamstring kicking it or strained his calf. He did something weird. it was heartbreaking. You know, the PI penalty on AJ Green. You know, it was heartbreaking for the kid. He looked phenomenal, and I hope he can get a win tonight. You know, I like to see him bounce back.
Yeah, that look on his face when that ball kind of dunked. I mean, that look on his face was priceless. Like, are you kidding me? I mean, yeah, games like that just absolutely baffling. And once again, maybe we saw some of the effects that COVID had on teams' ability to properly prepare for the regular season. What was your take, Jeremy?
Well, in general, like we all thought we were going to see, we saw some rustiness. I really saw it among the offensive line play. You could just tell that the speed of some of these defenses was getting to offensive linemen just because they haven't had the same camp. You know, you might have new stars.
Aaron Donald.
Continuity on the offensive line takes time. It takes trust. So it didn't surprise me when a lot of teams went out there and you saw a lot of guys miss blocking assignments or a guy sped right past them, you know, to go make a tackle for a loss or, you know, go sack Tom Brady or, you know, just get other guys around the league. But right. That's kind of what stood out to me. You saw some communication was not quite there yet in a variety of offenses. And then there were even some defensive plays where it's like you could tell two defenders thought they had the same guy and they just went, you know, some guy deep that just beat you for a touchdown. So just in general, I think it was expected to a degree, but maybe not to that degree in a few circumstances.
Yes, I mean, you're absolutely correct. You know, and hopefully going into week 2, we'll maybe see some of that rust come off a lot of the teams, and maybe we'll be right back to where we think this league really should be. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, you are joining us here on the Extra Point, and up to this point, we've been talking about the Big Ten's announcement on their return, and also the good and the bad with week 1 in the NFL. Speaking of week 1, here we are getting ready to enter week 2, and we do that tonight with the kickoff of the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns. We've already talked about how Burrow, you know, that last look on his face, pretty disappointing. Had for the most part, a very phenomenal game, especially as a rookie quarterback leading a franchise. But with the Cleveland Browns, there are certain expectations that are out there. Like Justice mentioned earlier, too many weapons not to be effective on the field. So let's go ahead with Robert in Jersey. Robert, give it to me. What are you expecting tonight, and who are you expecting to walk away with the win?
I know the narrative out there is regards to Cleveland Browns being a bad team, bad organization. You know, the talk surrounding Baker Mayfield being the number 1 draft pick and not living up to the hype. You know, all the weapons that surrounded Baker Mayfield and that offense. But tonight, I actually think Baker Mayfield gets it done. We saw Baker Mayfield in college. We saw him when he's the underdog and when everyone's piling on to him. That's when he plays his best. So I think he comes out and responds well tonight. And I can see the Cleveland Browns beating the Cincinnati Bengals, 30-17, 28-17, around those numbers. And I think Myles Garrett is going to be a big factor tonight. So that look that Joe Burrow had on his face, I think we might see that look again tonight, bro.
Oh, you heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. Robert out of New Jersey coming away with the Cleveland Browns winning tonight game. Justice out of New York. Who do you have tonight and the reasons why?
Yeah, this is a must-win game for Baker Mayfield. You know, Joe Burrow is great. He's going to be a franchise quarterback. You know, the Cincinnati Bengals, they got Joe Mixon and everything. They're a good team, but Baker Mayfield has too many around him to lose this game. You know, he's got to win it. I think he does win it. Watching the Bengals offensive line last week, Joey Bosa and Ingram just went off. They were completely out of sync, that offensive line. And like Robert said, I think Myles Garrett has a big night, 2 or 3 sacks maybe. I think they get it done. I think Baker Mayfield, he has a solid game. I don't see him having too good of a game. But I think they get it done. I think it's going to be 28-21 Cleveland Browns.
Wow, we got 2 Browns right out of the gate. All right, going over to Jeremy. Give it to me. Who you got tonight? Reasons why?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's going to be a pretty tight game throughout. I don't really see one team separating. I think on paper, both of these teams look better than how they've played, but that's on paper. Both of these teams have had a history of not kind of living up to what they can do. I think you're going to see a bunch of that kind of come in again. I do think Baker's going to be out to really try to prove people wrong. All the bad talk in Cleveland constantly. There were talks about how Browns are shopping Odell Beckham Jr. already, and it's like week 1. It's like, come on, pump the brakes, chill out. I definitely think they need to involve Austin Hooper more. You paid a tight end $12 million, and you only threw him 2 balls last week. I mean, that's not, when you pay a guy like that, you need to go to him. You paid him to make plays. You didn't give him an opportunity to make any plays last week, in all honesty. On paper, I think the Browns win this. My heart wants to say the Bengals will find a way to win this, but I do think the Browns are going to be the team that ends up doing it. I do think they have I think they have a better offense at this point, which I don't really think is saying much, but I do think their defensive line going against the Bengals offensive line, kind of like Justice alluded to with Bosa and Ingram going off last week, I think it's going to be a pretty similar story there. I think it's going to be a close game, though. I'm going to go like 24-16.
24-16 Browns. Wow. All right. Well, let's round that out. To all of your points, I do believe the more experienced team, of course, the more well-structured team is the Cleveland Browns. I do believe Burrow is going to have a good game. I think the offense is going to find a way to get into a good rhythm. But I think one of the things that they are currently lacking is a ferocious defense with teeth and grit in it. And in order to shake Baker Mayfield up and get him uncomfortable, you got to get in the backfield. And I don't see where the Bengals have that just yet. However, vice versa, the Browns do have that. And I believe they will get after Burrow. They'll shake him up a whole lot, especially off the edges. As long as they can penetrate in the middle with some good edge rush, I think they'll go ahead and isolate on Burrow. On the offensive side of the ball, I will say you got to start managing Baker Mayfield a whole lot better. You got a running back for a reason who can get the job done. So that ratio of pass to run play, I think the coaches are going to have to really balance that tonight to come out with the win. I do think the Browns are going to walk away with this. However, I think the Bengals will make a game of it. So I'm going in with the Browns. But I'm going in with a 17-14 win. Not a big win, but they'll pull it off. Excuse me, I got choked up there. Holy smokes, because I'm excited. I am beyond excited right now. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, you've been joining us here on the Extra Point, and we have a collective agreement that the Browns are going to win the game tonight. There's some variations to the scores here, so we'll see who's going to come closer tonight. Last week was pretty interesting. I thought for sure, I had a pretty good lock on the score. It looks like Robert had the score for quite some time. And then, I'm sorry, Robert, they took that away real quick from you. But I think we all had the right picks. We'll see if we got the right picks again this week. Parting shots. Let's go around. Jeremy, last word.
One thing I will say one more thing about tonight, and why I thought I might pick the Bengals, is that I did see Joe Burrow lead a comeback drive last week in his first rookie start. I have not seen that from Baker Mayfield yet.
Great point. Matter of fact, phenomenal point. Let's keep an eye on that tonight. Robert, last word.
Yeah, Roland and the guys. I just want to tip my hat off to one of my favorite players of all time, and that's Adrian Peterson. He looked like he jumped back in the time machine against the Chicago Bears. So keep chugging along, AP. I'm still here. I'm still enjoying watching you play. Keep going.
Good deal. Justice, last word.
Yeah, I know we all picked the Kansas City Chiefs last week, but I might have an upset alert for you. They traveled to face the Los Angeles Chargers this week, and I think that's an underrated matchup. You know, they probably have the best cornerback room in the NFL right now. You know, they got Chris Harris, they got Casey Hayward, and they got Desmond King outside. You know, holding it down. Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins. Probably they have a dominant defensive line with Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram. You know, I know Derwin James is out, but that defense is still loaded. And I think if Tyrod Taylor can, you know, transform a little bit, you know, and keep this game close, they could probably pull it out again this week.
Hey, great one. That's a great one. I'll leave you with this last word. Even though I pounced on the Dallas Cowboys, and I will continue to pounce on them until they get their act together, but what I was very impressed with was the offensive play by the Rams. They did a phenomenal job, really almost like a symphony, moving the offensive line off a lot of play action play and would go right back to the same play action and totally throw the linebacking core off with the same structure. Now, we're talking about the Dallas Cowboy linebackers, so maybe there was a whole lot not to confuse there, the way they've been playing. But I will give the Rams a lot of credit. They look like a well-oiled symphony off the play action. I'm definitely looking forward to see what they do here in the next couple of weeks. Ladies and gentlemen, you've joined us again here on the Extra Point. We are minutes away from kickoff. Please take the time, check us out. Jeremy, Robert, Justice, bringing their expertise to you day in and day out. I'm Roland Rainey. Enjoy the game.